Okay, I think we're recording. Let's see. I assume everybody can hear me just fine. Okay, good. All right. Oh. All right. Well, welcome to week 4. We've passed the halfway point in this class. The starting to see people's grades starting to take shape. It's been a interesting few weeks for everything involved. I didn't get any questions in email. I know I have a couple of actions inside of IntelliPath I need to still take care of with people struggling with certain topics, but I'll get to that here soon. Okay, looks like we're back to 4 people. Okay. Yeah, so this time we're going to talk about pivot tables somewhat and how problem solving works within Excel. And as well as what databases mean with Excel or importing data into and out of Excel. The grades in the overall thing is pretty much now spread across the board somewhat. Based on some discussions recently that I had with my faculty lead, there's going to be some changes in how the discussion boards will be graded, in that they want me to use the rubric and to give explanation on grading scale within the rubric. So with that in mind, I built a general scale for how I'm going to apply the rubric now to everybody's posts, which include things like if you didn't apply knowledge from the course while making your report, so it was really off topic, well, that'll deduct some points. Or if your word count is considerably short for your follow-on posts, or your posts are like generally nothing more than words of encouragement for your follow-on posts, those will be graded at lesser than general responses used to be. So I put a posting in the announcements about on this general idea of what this will look like. So definitely take a chance to look at it and try to do a better job in earning points throughout this class. So that everything in the end matters, right? Okay. All right. Additionally, I am going to continue to accept old homework all the way back to include old discussion board posts. So if you want to take a chance of me improving your grade from the past, this would be your opportunity this week to do so. You can go back, submit for weeks 1, 2, or 3, and I will regrade it for additional credit as need be, using potentially the new style of how I'm going to grade discussion board posts. So with that in mind, this week's discussion board is going to be about pivot tables and charts and what it is you would need to know about those. There's a little video there that gets into the specifics on that particular piece, and I'm going to go ahead and set it up so that it is an option for us to use in this class here in a second. Okay, go back to this. All right. So pivot tables really are is it takes data and it changes the way you view data such that it is now a cross section of how it's analyzed, so you can get different aspects of you into the data you're looking at. So you can get summary examples of and/or better meaning and understanding of what that is about. So we're going to get into a bit of that. So, all right. So within this particular IntelliPath Unit 4, we're going to talk about multi-sheet workbooks, databases, Excel, linking to files, pivot tables, etc. So really, Excel and databases, they are different in some respects. A true database keeps the records stored on a file system, and every time you make a modification to the record, the file system itself is then updated or modified to account for that change, right? But in Excel, everything is done in memory by a user. So in the context of that, you only save it to the file system when you hit save in Excel, whereas on database, every time you interact with the record, the modifications get changed and logged in a way you can go forward and roll it back from. So, and really the biggest difference is whether or not it's stored to the file system more directly. So within Excel, the benefit is that it's faster, it's more efficient, it works with smaller amounts of data. Databases can be geographically dispersed. Lots of users can use it at the same time. And data is then modified as far as like how and in what order they are actually processed by the system. So now, modern Excel, when you start integrating things like SharePoint underneath it, where it gives you the ability for multiple users to access the same worksheet either through the web browser version of Excel or through the application of Excel at the same time, and you can actually watch each person go around the different cells on the same worksheet. So you can both work within the same worksheet at the same time. That kind of breaks the classical understanding of the difference between a database and Excel, because at that point the data is actually being dynamically stored inside of SharePoint with in a specialized means. So so that's just, but it is. But within the context of IntelliPath, it understands the difference between Access, which is a database, much like Oracle Enterprise is a database, or Mondo, or Cassandra, are all databases. But it understands the differences primarily is databases work from storage, whereas Excel works from memory, or applications work from memory. So that's where you can get this piece. And also, when deciding between a database and Excel, the old word of thumb was, do you intend to have more than 65,000 records or rows of data in your table at any point in its life? Then it starts to make sense to have a database. Nowadays, with newer modern versions of Excel, you can actually have 1 million lines of it'll be able to process 1 million lines going down of data, rows going down in data at one time. So so even then, Excel has gotten better at being closer to a large scale database, but that's because of how it's become so useful for businesses at this time. So within so 1 million rows down and 16,000 rows across, or columns across, is how you can now access data within Excel. Sorry, apparently my stomach or something's bugging me today. Now there's ways to import data into it. Now, if I wanted to, I could very easily, I could drag a tab from one worksheet of another workbook over directly into this, and you can pick up all of those pieces there left behind. So here's like a couple of useful formulas that I've found that I keep track of, just because I find their usefulness is pretty simple. So I copy and keep that in a couple of different places of various locations, so I can have access to it quickly. But in reality, is you can do the same thing with like text files. So I opened up like a text file, I could drag and drop it over here into, or copy and paste directly out of a text file and over into Excel as well. So there's lots of ways to do stuff. If you use a CSV file, you could do the CSV file where you drag it over as a tab, and it'll drop it in, closes the CSV file, but then introduces a tab into your workbook. So you have ways to integrate a large number of things quickly. Like so if I wanted to do this, I just brought in like a text file, and it dropped it into its own tab here as in Excel, and then from there I could literally do that, where I now have it integrated into my main workbook. So there's lots of quick ways to lots of quick ways you can make updates to things along by integrating data rapidly into Excel. So, and in that case, I didn't even use the file open text file. I just did it straight. I had a text file open, or I had a text file in my file system. And I just dragged it directly into the worksheet, and it did it for me. So, yeah. But yeah, like I said, there's a couple of useful things. Like if you need to get rid of trailing spaces from a cell, you could do this, and then you could copy the value of that cell back over where it originally came from. Or removing leading spaces from the same thing, go from one to another, then you can copy back on the adjusted version of that. So you can split up files if you needed to split up text. You could do wrong workbook. If I needed to say I wanted to split this up based on every cell is then broken up by text to columns. I can do text to columns. I can say delimited in that. So every time I see a space, it turns it into another set of cells. So you can do that too as a means to break up things. So there's also a nice little video on filtering or data extraction and data exfiltration. The extracting data is a means by which taking it out of Excel so you can manipulate it and then put it into something else that's more useful. It's really good for purposes of solving data analysis or asking questions or getting what if scenarios accomplished rapidly is by taking subsections of data and manipulate them in a manner that you need to in order to get out what you need from it. A lot of times I'll take like a large spreadsheet, I'll save it off as a temporary copy, eliminate all of the rows and columns that I don't want to deal with in this problem, and reduce the data set down to something much more manageable, much smaller, and then do either filtering and or pivot table processing on it in order to get down to the point where I actually want to do something, right? So that's where that comes in there. Exfiltration is the act of intentionally removing data from a system in order to unauthorized manner in order to do something with it, whereas extraction is the process of copying data or obtaining data out for analytical reasons. So there's your cybersecurity question of the day. Another back to OLE, what we talked about last week. One of the questions inside of IntelliPath was, is there a way to display tables and graphs in there? And the answer is yes, as long as you have embedded Excel or charts within Word, and you do that through the paste as or paste special to do either a link or an Excel worksheet type directly into the Word document. So that's how you get the dynamically linked OLE to show up in the Word itself. And as an example of that's where I took a snapshot of this was for my dissertation, but effectively here's an Excel spreadsheet that fed into this table in such a means that it was APA formatted correctly, so that whenever I updated the values inside of Excel, my dissertation was then updated as well. So you can have the correct data there for quick presentation reporting or just building out large documents, right? In a fairly effective manner. So Excel typically is used within Word in this context primarily for financial information, but it can be used for a number of different things. The product function, which takes two cells, say 1, 6, 2, 7, 3, 8, 4, 9, 5, 10. The product then does this word, then does a multiplication. So if I go over to, see, sum product, here we go. So in this case, the equal product A2 and B2, it comes up with 1 times 6, 2 times 7, 5 times 10. So basically this is what it does is it multiplies it. And then you can have the sum of the products, or you could actually do sum product, which is a function itself. And that lets you take a range of data, this whole set, and it comes up with what that is too. So you can have a means to cross-check yourself to ensure you have accurate numbers and accurate functions across the board, building out what you need to build. So hope that all made sense. Any questions on any of that so far? Okay, great. So there's another function within Excel that's also useful in order to determine come up with answers in what if scenarios, right? So if I wanted to have numbers increasing from 1 to 15, but I only have 9 of those numbers in that context, right? But I needed to know the largest value first in decreasing order, or the largest value or smallest value first in increasing order, right? So you sort these numbers, or if you didn't know that, you could just have a random set of numbers, and you could have Excel then tell you which order those values all happen to be part of. So keep it in the wrong. I just need to close that. Close. Okay. Close that. Okay. There. Now I just have one Excel open. All right. So if I want to do that, I could say, all right, of these raw numbers, and rank using the rank function, I could say, all right, of this, tell me this value, and tell me based on ascending order, which is where this comma 1 on the end comes, in what numerical order that value shows up in this list. So 2 comes in the second place because there's a 1 in front of it, right? So 1, 2, but 4, which doesn't have a predecessor of 3, but does have a predecessor of 1 and 2, rank will tell you it's the third number in that order of all of these numbers in this entire list. And I could even go so far as like adding numbers here, right? So if I wanted to, I could say 22. I could add in the 3. I could add in 99. I could put a 0 in if I want, and 5. As long as you have those numbers being unique, right? You could have it tell you that 0 is now in the first place, 2 is now in the third place, and 1 is in the second place, 3 is in the fourth place. So you can have it from the increasing order. You can use rank to sit there and take your raw data and tell you details about it so you can extract information out for analyzing the numbers. In this case, since there's 14 total values, down here you see count 14 the corner, in the lower right corner, this also tells me that 99 is in the 14th place when it's in ascending order, and first place was in descending order. So, and those numbers do get dynamically updated as you add things to it. Now, in this case, is also with median, you can have it basically ignore the extremes and tell you what the middle of the road is, or true average, which is in this case 6.89, because of these numbers layouts, right? So you can have it tell you, say I insert one more where it's going to be 99 or 88 there. 88 fills in those formulas for me. And now I know my median of this whole range is 7 because it ignored the extremes. But at the same time, the average, because of this, it tilted in such a way that the true average is 15, but the median is really 7. So depending on what you need to get for your answer, that's how you can look at that. So, okay. Hope that all made sense. That's how rank works inside of Excel. It's useful for figuring out priority in different things, right? So, yeah. And this is the function you would use to actually build out an Excel or a rank list with, and the parameters for that purpose. And you can use it, like in this case, if you were to build yourself a rank set and you put these numbers in, you could have it tell you what all those numbers were, and that ultimately, as long as they're unique scores, you can eliminate all duplicates. But in that case, you can determine, all right, if I have 10 scores and I needed to know what the top 25% of those scores were, or if you had 19 scores, you need to know the top 20% or 20% of them. You can use the rank to then figure out the order by which that those numbers fall in, and then you could like tell it to select which of these are the correct answer. So in this case, because there's 19 things and you want to know top 20%, it's basically divided by 5. The answer is 4, which is the simple thing. But in that case, if you needed to figure out which 4 these were, that would be easy to do with rank. So hope that all made sense. Any questions on any of that? Okay, I'm gonna go and set this up to play this video about pivot tables here quick while I go uh, blow my nose. So sharing. Gonna change my sharing here. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Yeah. Right, so basically, what it's doing here is it's taking a order list of values, and it helps if I turn back on the audio.
And there's the type of each row,
So,
sales or expenses, had these two, and this cost. This I just use a random function. This is all just random. And there's a tax. This one is a 12% tax. So as you can see, yeah, this is just random data. And then with pivot tables, it allows you to analyze all these very quickly and dynamically. In my earlier video, I went over automated tables, so make sure to watch that one. That's to just modify this table by itself. But with pivot tables, it allows you to do much more and quicker. So for you highlight it all, click insert. So you can go pivot table. I usually click both pivot table and pivot chart. So it allows you to graph what the table is. So there's our data we selected. You could also use an external source. And you could also now here choose where you want to add your pivot table, either new sheet or existing worksheet, and just pick a location. You could even add this data to a data model, which is multiple tables inside a pivot table. And I'll go over that in a later video. So if I just click OK, just in a new sheet. So now this is our pivot table. This is our pivot chart right here. And this is the data that it's connected to. And as you see here, there's pivot chart fields. So this allows you basically to, to group and modify your data visually. So you can go, let's just say we want to, okay, so we want to graph the date and the cost. So I just click them. You could also drag and drop like that, etc. As you, that's multiple there. Just take it out. And as you can see, this table automatically changes, and now this chart automatically changes as well, which is quite amazing. So I click the tax on there, and there's the graph shown there. I'll make it on its own just to see it better. So move chart in a new sheet. Okay, so that's how that looks. I'll just change the chart type. You could change it using a combo, different stuff, or I just like using the line. Okay, so this is the date now, and that's the red is the tax, and the blue is the blue is the cost. So as you can see here, with this one here, these values are the sum. So we're using sum, and this is and you could also change it to average, etc. So when we go back to our data, as you can see, this is what it's being plotted. But since all the rows every single day is different, then you're gonna have each day is gonna be different. So whether you use average or sum, it's gonna be the same thing. What if we were to modify it right here? Let's call this January 1st, 2015. Yeah, so now we have 2 days that are both January 1st. So if we go back here, so it hasn't updated, so you would go analyze. Now you could refresh. You could refresh all your pivot tables. Just click all. There's only one. So anyway, so now as you can see, there's only one January 1st. January 2nd has been skipped, but now we've added the sum. So that's quite amazing, actually. We just added these two. So 232 plus 552 is equal to 784. And now what you could do here is change this. Let's go to average. So if you go average, so there you go. That's an average 392. It's taxes an average. You could even go Yeah, you can even modify to the max or other stuff like this max, or you do a product of multiplying two numbers or something, and then you could do that. I'll just stick with the sum. So we go back to it here, and now the cool thing is you could use this filter one. I'll put this filter right here, which is quite amazing. So as you can see over here at the top, you click it, you could either select both of them, or if you have a lot of them, you can select multiple ones, or select one at a time. I'll click expense only. So now we're looking at only the expense, and see how quickly I was able to do that. I quickly able to see the expense plus the tax spent, so it's total. Change it back to sales. Yeah, and there you go with the sales. It's super quick, and you can see that. And then you could also, let's say you.
So that to be said is that using pivot tables, you can take a quick analysis of data such that you can, let's go back to new share. You can use that data to then rapidly figure out your numbers within a given set of information. So in this, like in this case, if I took this data where years, a course, and which student level people were in, and I can build a pivot table here that tells me I can analyze bits and pieces of what I need to know so that I could say, um, I could get a feel for how many students are in a given course. And then you could actually go ahead and graph that such that you could figure out from this, no, it's no longer connected. All right. So you can figure out from this where you could do a breakdown of your data. So if you had like successful sets of data and you structured it such that you could build a pivot table with, you can actually go into a deep analysis of that data, especially when it comes to like inventory or sales or the like. You can do a lot of a fancy understanding of the meaning behind your data. So ultimately, you could figure out that in this case, with the right combination of what you're filtering on in your columns, that you can determine from your data set in this, whereas I had like a list of number of whichever year you were in your senior year or freshman year or whatever, and how many people were taking classes that year. I could then determine how many courses were being taught or how many students were in the given course based on um, that information. So pivot tables give you the ability to take sets of data, and that it may be hard for you to understand when you look at it in the raw form, but it turns it into numericals that you can then, or alternatively, it lets you flip it so you have a three-dimensional view of the data, so you can actually do better what if scenarios or deep dive analysis in order to do business logic. So you can come up with answers to scenarios or what if needs that you have. So I hope that brief introduction made sense there, but not without getting too far off course with the lot stuff here. Let's go back to where I left off at, which was logic charts, right? So within logic, you can decide to do comparison of various cells. So if I needed to do like an XOR versus a compare, where is this cell greater than or less than or equal to that cell? With an XOR, it's false because your XOR would be, is this less than this, or is something else greater than that? So then going over to Excel, let's see, it's Excel's logic XOR. So in this case, I'm checking to see if the cell here is this less than this, and is this greater than this? And with the XOR, it figured out that lesser is false. So that's why that says false, because it knows that this is, in an XOR case, it's both are true. So you take the opposite of both true. In the case of, is this equal or not? This is not equal, so you get a false. This is equal, and this is, in both cases, this is both correct. and that's equal. So it tells you that this one is actually true in that context. So really, in the case if you have true, true, and you did a not on true, your not is always going to be false. So if you did a false on this column, and I'll just highlight it for easier to read. If you took this data here and you did a not on that file, it'll give you the opposite of what this is. So if this was true, it'll give you the opposite, which is false. If you did both using the AND function instead, where it's now checking for both of these values against this value, and you did AND, you true plus true is always true, but true plus false always equals false, or a false plus true is a false, and false plus false is a false, right? So when you take these together from a logic standpoint, a not is the opposite of one, but and is when you take two of them combined, it's always going to be true only if they're both true. In the case of an or, it is true if either is true. So same concept, but in this case, in or, the function looks as true or true is true, but if you have any true in these sets of data here, the whole thing will be answered as true. So you can use that to help with your business logic too. But of course, if all things are false, then or is still false. XOR gives you only if both are valid as true or both as valid as false. It tells you true when they're not the same, or you have one that's just is a discrepancy from another. Now, when you expand that out to being, I thought I fixed this before. Delete left. But when you expand it out to so you have a three-dimensional view of that same kind of data. So true is only true when all pieces within the AND is true, or is only true when all pieces, or is true if any of the three pieces or any of the number of pieces is considered true. And this can be multiple tabs. It's not limited to one or two. For your ANDs or ORs or XORs, you can have a number of different variables that you're comparing it against. But true in OR is if any of them are true across the board. Whereas in AND, they have to all be true in order to have any true. So, and you get the same kind of effect where true and XOR is true. It does a comparison of the first two, takes the answer from the first two, and then compares it to the next one in line, then takes that sum or that answer and then compares it to the next one in line. It goes down. It just walks down the row in this case. So in the case of a true of an XOR, because two values, if they're both true, is false, this one calculates false, then it knows it's false compared to true. They're not the same, so the answer of XOR becomes true. And here it's false as the answer compared against the second false, and that's why that then becomes false becomes false. So this, in this case, this value here of this logic matches up with how that worked, because it does this one and then figures out the answer to compare it to that. So business law from a logic standpoint, I know I'm like throwing stuff in random order here, but from a logic standpoint, the intent is that XOR is if both answers are the same, then it's false, and if the answers don't match, then it's true. And that's how you figure out answers to some of your business problems you need to work on, or your math problems in certain classes that you'll have. Basically, the XOR is how the OR, the AND, and the XOR is really how computers actually process things. Because at the very fundamentals of how a computer actually processes data, it's all logic gates, in that it's either a 0 or a 1 in binary, running trillions of calculations per second on your computer. Well, those trillions of calculations, each one of those could be a calculation as an XOR statement, for instance. So from a business logic standpoint, so it knows how to process data by just having so many things going on with XOR statements to understand how to store data, how to process data, how to do math, how to do basic functions with that XOR gating. And that's really how a computer fundamentally works. So it just does trillions of those every second in its processor core. But here's a quick cheat sheet so that when you take this type of exam in math or in Telepath for this class, you have it for your ability to then pass later on what you need to know. This is the syntax and how to put those logic functions into Excel, but it's there to just come up with answers for different things, looking how you want to get stuff done. So that's another way you could write it to do the same thing I just showed you. This is if you want to do an if condition of is 1 less than 5? If so, the answer is if condition is true, it's 1. 1 being true, 0 being false. Is 2 greater than 6? The answer is false. Is 3 and 4 equal? The answer is false. But is 4 less than 8? The answer is true. So this is another way to write it with if statements as opposed to using the logic gate of ands or ors. But in the end, it's really comparing two values against each other, and you're telling it in the context of true or false what the condition should be. So if you wanted to customize your output, you could use the if statement to do it that way. So it's if condition true or false. So logic test, value of true, value of false. And you can then write your stuff up so that you could say, well, maybe you want to have your true not say true, but if you want to say like buy versus sell, if you want to compare stocks, right? You did, is this greater than this, or is this over a certain threshold or under a certain threshold? The answer could be buy would be an answer you might have to put in there, and then you could say make decisions based on what you need to do financially, right? Or inventory needs any restock inventory as an example, right? It exceeded a certain threshold in your sales, so you need to worry about going back to your inventory to flush your sales support stuff. So there's all kinds of different uses for that. Other things you can do is set equal today or days start and end or number of days. So if I wanted to do like what's today, it'll tell me that today is 3/14. If I wanted to say today plus 14 days, it'll tell me what it is in 14 days from now. So you can also use that to build up calendars if you needed to build up calendars for tracking your appointments or your business work, right? Example of an example of how somebody could use a calendar really quick. Build up a special calendar. You could figure out your dates and times and stuff. So like if you looked in the announcements, you saw the calendar for this session. Well, I built that up using Excel to give you a quick highlight of what you can expect from this class, or at least all the classes I'm teaching. But it applies to any of your classes with just a little bit of overlaid logic, right? So, and yeah, hope that all made sense. Any questions so far? Did I completely lose everybody at this point? Is the weather dry in your area?
Weather's dry here.
Okay. All right, so back to pivot tables, right? So I showed you what you could do with pivot tables, just taking a bunch of raw data and actually doing it, summarizing. So really, it's a great tool to summarize for decision making, right? So it gives you the ability to work with large data sets, do some advanced filtering, advanced sorting, and give you different perspectives on what that data is telling you in order to come up with a better answer for what you're trying to achieve, right? And you can use it to do sorting, to do math. You can do summaries. I need to hide that, I guess, at this point. In a prior version of this class, I used to have students actually create a pivot table and tell me back the results of certain things, right? So unfortunately, they changed it so that I'm not allowed to do that anymore. But you'll have enough times to deal with pivot tables by experimenting with Excel in order to help your business, as well as to answer a couple of basic questions from IntelliPath. So I would certainly encourage you to at least experiment either with the downloaded version of Excel you installed, or even just go into like Google Sheets and do the same thing with Google Sheets. You can do it for free. Now, in this case, this is an example where they're building a set of tables where they worry about number of hours by employees, then a number of hours worked each week, and you can build yourself such that you're looking at compact, you're looking at format, you get embedded Excel tables. You can come up with different pieces to get that information dedicated, where you can build this chart so that you could have these numbers set up, or your work schedule, whatever, set up such that you then have it imported into Word. So you have your dashboard being built automatically, so you can give your boss details, right? So any questions about anything that you want me to go back over, or I wasn't overly clear about because I jumped around quite a bit today? Okay. All right. Well, I ran out of material to talk about to this point, and all right. So I hope everybody does well. Just a reminder that I'm going to be changing a little bit how the grading of the discussion board, so it's going to be a little more granular and a little bit more varied in the scores that everybody will be getting, because it's going to be, I'm going to deal with things like word count and grammar, as well as content and meaning behind your statements and your discussion board posts. So you'll notice that grading start to show up today. Other than that, I hope you all have a good week. Remember, I'm going to accept all the homework back all the way since day one. So you don't need to worry about that. I may or may not add in a lateness penalty at this point to it if I do have 10%. But either way, at least the goal of this class is to accumulate points in order to get like a better score. So go back, do good work. I hope to see everybody improve. Thank you, and have a good week.